Hello and welcome back. As we all know, War Thunder has finally added advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, improving the realm of Fox 3s greatly from the bulky AIM-54 to the faster and longer-range AMRAAM. Along with this, War Thunder also reworked a lot of its radar mechanics. One of these new features for radars included datalink channels. When the F-14 was first introduced with the AIM-54, the datalink feature was very rudimentary. Because the ANEWG-9 has the same amount of datalink channels as the maximum amount of AIM-54s it carried, which was 6, the F-14 could use datalink on all 6 missiles independently if launched at different targets. However, with this update, the game introduced aircraft whose radars had datalink channels less than the amount of Fox 3s it could carry. An example of this is the Su-27SM and the J-11A, which could carry 6 R-77 missiles, but only have datalink channels for 2 missiles or 1 missile respectively. The logic would be that the radar could only really guide 2 missiles or 1 missile if you launch more than that. The other missiles would follow the last point it received from the radar and use its inertial navigation system to travel to that point until such time that the radar seeker activates and starts tracking and guiding the missile autonomously. However, did you know that there are 2 aircraft in the game without any datalink channels that have Fox 3 missiles? That's right, it's the AV-8B Plus and the Israeli F-15 Baz Mishupar. Before I go on, let me explain how datalink works in the simplest of ways. Imagine that the radar is a flashlight. When you switch a radar to track while scan mode, it's like a flashlight moving back and forth horizontally across the scan angle, and as it goes back and forth, you take note of the things that you see moving. Where they are relative to you, how fast they're going, and in what direction. Every time the flashlight shines a light on them, you take a note of the changes in their position from the last time it was scanned. Now when you launch a Fox 3 missile in TWS mode, imagine you're telling someone to go for one of the targets. As they're walking to the target, you verbally update them where the target is by perhaps yelling its new position or saying its new position, and they will correct their course. In this case, the voice is essentially your datalink. It's not the signal from the flashlight or the light. It's not you, the radar, but it's your voice. It's the signal containing specific instructions to the inertial guidance system to adjust itself accordingly relative to the target. The missile itself receives commands from the datalink antenna, usually under the rocket motor. Another point is that it's very important not to confuse missile datalink with tactical datalink like Link 16, as those are not reliant on radar but rather radio waves or cables. So now, what actually happens if your radar has no datalink channels according to the game? I tested it out using the Baz Mishupar and got somewhat interesting results. For our trials, we decided to fire out at 50 kilometers, the maximum range the ANAPG-63 PSP could get a solid pulse Doppler track, while at the same time not instantly at pitbull range. I instructed my friend Rowdy Horse Ford to retain his heading and instead dive down, as he observed that while Fox 3s have good horizontal scanning, they have poor vertical scanning. The first trial I did was with a solid lock throughout the flight of the missile to prove that the AMRAAM can be guided by a solid track like a Sparrow. This is an intuitive assumption to make, as it would be logical that even if the AMRAAM has no SAR-H seeker, because it has a radar transmitter and receiver instead, a solid lock still provides location information and can still be sent over by datalink. However, this can't be the case as the F-15 Baz Mishupar has no datalink channels according to the game. And you can tell this is the case because when the Baz Mishupar launches an AMRAAM, the radar screen on your HUD does not show you where the AMRAAM is or where its INS is directing it, unlike in other aircraft with their own datalink channels. The next trial I did was to launch an AMRAAM in the Baz Mishupar's RAM. RAM is a special mode for the Baz Mishupar, American F-15A and F-15J that uses ANAPG-63 PSP radar, or the programmable signal processor radar that acts like a track while scan mode. RAM stands for Raid Assessment Mode. In this mode, the radar achieves track on a moving target, and switching to Raid Assessment Mode forces the radar to scan a very small area of that sector with very precise, tiny scans to see whether the radar is returning one aircraft or multiple aircraft closely packed together. In-game is treated as a very narrow track wall scan, although the aircraft being tracked will have its RWR receive it as a solid single target track. From this, we also learned that Raid Assessment Mode can also guide the AMRAM with Datalink. As we can see in the video, the missile is still moving towards where the target is as long as I keep the RAM reticle on it. The last two phases of the trial were to guide multiple missiles with single target track and Raid Assessment Mode. Once again, the outcome was the same for both times. Two missiles were guided by single target track and Raid Assessment Mode, and they were both following the single target track and Raid Assessment Mode track. This got me very suspicious. I was starting to think Datalink was actually bugged rather than some funky coding Gaijin did with AMRAMs. So I tried out the SU-27SM, which only has two Datalink channels. The expectation here would be that if you fire all 6 missiles, the radar should only display the last 2 missiles as they're the only ones filling up the 2 Datalink channels. Alas, the result was surprising. The radar was displaying all the launch missiles instead of just 2. As you can see on the radar screen, there's like 4, 5, or 6 missiles being tracked. Because while the first 3 missiles were clumped together, and they look like one, they're still there, even if they didn't hit. Although, according to a forum technical moderator, when this was brought up in the forums, the AN-APG-63 PSP should have data link channels, but the moderator in question did not elaborate on how many or how this data link upgrade came to be. So the question remains, how does War Thunder actually simulate data link now, after Seek and Destroy drop? There should be parameters to the data link channel property, but what it is, or where to begin finding it, is beyond me. Personally, I believe it's just a bug. The AN-APG-65Q on the AV-8B Plus should be able to have data link channels, likewise with the APG-63 PSP. I mean, it's not like giving data link channel properties to aircraft that don't have Fox 3s weren't done by War Thunder, because the Yak-141, SC-27, and J-11 have data link channels listed on their properties. But anyway, what do you think? Is it a bug, or is War Thunder not explaining their features very well to the players? Both are equally probable in the case of War Thunder. But yeah, thanks for watching. Next week's video hopefully is another War Thunder chats being read, but I'll have to be very strict with the submissions I'm choosing, as the second episode of that series was actually hit with the dreaded yellow dollar sign. The first for any of my video. But on the flip side, the first episode of the series, like the very first one, got 100,000 views, and still climbing, and I really can't thank you enough. This is the Dr. MD. Godspeed.